So we sort of came up with two problems with the school funding issue. The solutions to those two parts of that problem and some benefits. And so under the school funding, at that table, we talked about the parent payment policy. Because obviously some parents can contribute, but some can't. And that's the whole equity thing. And then you've got angst in the community because some parents are paying, some parents aren't paying. Schools are caught in the middle because they're not getting the funding they need, so they have to shift that responsibility on parents. And I'm pretty sure you're all pretty clear where Parents Victoria stands on that debate. So public schools is an always playing field in that respect. So what we came up with a solution is that change the word parent payments back to parent contributions. And the solution, the tax deductibility opportunity for that parent contribution, because you can't get a tax deduction on a payment, but you can on a contribution.
Yes.
For the school, we're talking about the direct parent because the education funds has shifted to the responsibility of parents to make pay. So we're saying government, this is like a pitch to the government, make that contribution tax deductible. Right. That's where all this.
Well,
it's not. But added to that, there's that, because they've only got those, you're right, there's only those two, read that was spread how we inspired folks from. Yeah, Brilliant's fun and yeah. However, like years ago, remember when there was a time when our parents back in home used to they could be able to claim expenses, educational expenses on their tax. And then the government played around with it. So our table was saying, why couldn't that be part of the solution? That's a overweening bitch. This is the benefit. Remember, so it's problem, solution, benefit. That will win votes. And that will make parent communities much happier. That'll take schools out of being the middleman to collect the dollars and reduce angst. The other one was in Trevor's paper and his delivery. He talked about the services of the DRQA and the VCAA and how that, whatever that terminology that was used, how the government school sector have to contribute. That's why our SRM is reduced, because that money, you're only not going to help again, goes down because of that cost. But the non-government schools are not contributing to that cost, only the government schools. So so that's the problem. The solution is it has to be equally funded by all those schools because they all receive the same service.
Yep.
Right? And the benefit of that is the cost is spread more wrongly.
We didn't necessarily come up to a conclusion or a benefit. There was a lot of frustration around understanding that why is it what it is. And while we acknowledged and understood a lot of issues within the schools, the biggest solution that we could come around is that there needs to be a robust collaboration between the parents and the schools.
Parents, and then the other thing we discussed was how we address the funding.
What was the say?
Yeah, needs analysis. Yeah. So it's all based on needs. Basically, that's
Be a means test for each school potentially.
Absolutely. So there was a lot of.
So means testing schools rather than means testing parents.
No, the school. So, like, there are some public schools that are obviously, more
In more affluent areas, and therefore
they don't need
more contributions from parents than other areas. And so if it was means tested on how much funding you got based on, I guess, the resources that are coming into the school from other areas.
So there's the allocation distribution of the SR with what we call the budget of the state. But Sharon, you're going to say something.
So I was just going to say the SRS should be needs-based on top of the standard amount. It should be needs-based, and the assessment, like means test, if you want to call it that, would be of the student cohort and what additional funding was required for that particular school. So if you've got a high population of refugees where English is their second and third or fourth language, you're going to need extra funding. If you've got a high population of children with a disability, you're going to need extra funding. So all of those things need to be taken into account, and we do recognise that even our public system is inequitable in that there are some schools and families who have great capacity to pay fees and also to fundraise, and other schools who don't have that capacity at all. So we don't want to means test parents and have them pay extra if they don't afford it. That's not
Thank you. We might take the microphone to Trish and the Thank you, Liz. I think from that we've identified some stuff. We understand what the problem is. You've talked about a solution, and we know that that's not interest.
We talked probably around it more than coming up with too many solutions and the benefits of the solutions. But in that, I think we did raise just a couple of points worth mentioning. We talked about the, I suppose, the staffing shortage and the issues that leaves all the schools and the pressure that it creates within the schools itself. And so with an SRS at 100%, it makes an immediate difference because it means more staff and more resources within schools. And then I suppose the conversation, it moved sideways a little bit, and we looked at, I suppose, at the flow-on benefits of what an improved SRS would mean in terms of the health system, the legal system, the justice system, and all those things that a really well-educated population aren't then a cost on the public purse later on. And I suppose learning from all the presenters that we've had this morning about where we can get to for that, for John's channel. Some of those resources help the kids get there a lot earlier. Also some of those regional things as well. So I suppose following on from Sharon's point that there should maybe be a regional allowance on top as well because of the disadvantage that regional schools can have. So,
and do regions still have that discretionary funding bucket they used to have years ago, or is that depleted, or
No, they don't have that. They don't know different to every or the other.
So,
Oh, except for bus fees.
Yeah, that's right. And some funding's available, but it's on a case by case basis. It's not. Yeah.
This is really frustrating subject for me, so I'll manage to explain. So at the end of the day, bit of conflict, but at the end of the day, it should just be fair across the board. Fair between public schools and charity schools. As simple as that. It should be fair for the teachers, and we just probably disagree a bit, but every charity school should be on payroll tax. Every single one of them, not just those who charge $15,000 and above. Every single charity school should be on payroll tax. Make it fair, because it just divides and frustrates them to no end. Makes me so frustrated. Poor David.
As you can imagine, Gail, we had some robust discussion. I think that the approach from parents, it really does need to be from the ground up, because parents are impacted so much, and families, and obviously the students. But I think that starting a funding war between the sectors is not really the answer, and that's happened in the past. And what that does is it does divide people in the state. We don't really want our children to be
so we're not calling
impacted by
action
that.
about the two sectors. It's a bit like the Every Child campaign. We're just asking every child.
Yeah, every child.
It's not about which
And I
school
think
they go to.
the pitch, like you were saying, is to focus on the impact that the increase will have on our children in the future, and really focusing on those aspects of the positives, the benefits and how that needs to happen. So just wanted to share that. Do them in.
And there's this table here. Get
Gail, I just wrote down a couple of extra things.
oh, good on you, mate.
We talked about maybe that parents need to be aware of the discrepancy between funding for private and non-private. Be fair. More promotion of what's happening in government schools, that the great scores they're getting. I know at Eildon that I'm connected with a little tiny school, about 40 kids. Not one of those kids were recommended for additional learning in any of the NAPLAN areas. So, little schools can do great things. We talked about questioning the status of charity schools. And my wild idea was to transfer all education funding back to the states so that, we just get rid of the Commonwealth. Yeah.
Which comes back to your point, Greg, about don't need to get to the level of Commonwealth, but state, because and our team we talked about just understanding it at state level, and then when you get into that next level, you do what over time.
I moved on your papers, so just this one. And that's it. And that's okay. Oh, how about papers?
Thank you. Well, we actually started with a bit of discussion about the need to understand the background to the funding and how far back a situation actually goes and where it came from, thanks Mr. Bolting, to the disparity. And the second thing we did note that ragging on Catholic and independent schools is not going to fix anything, and that we needed to be respectful in the way we read about it if we listened to John this morning, or even if we came with those ideas in our heads. So school funding, basically the current situation is steeped in discrimination, inequality, and different levels of accountability and transparency. So it's definitely not a level playing field. We kind of focused on some of the things that related particularly to our schools. So it wasn't necessarily maybe where we should have been. But sufficient funding to have the actual student resources, whether it's textbooks or e-learning subscriptions, etc. That shouldn't have to come out of parent payments. It should be there. A valid spread of teacher incentive payments. So if their school lost teachers because there was extra funding for teachers to go rural, and they could earn an extra $50,000 if they went and taught at particular country schools. So having that equity around those incentives holds your staff in schools. It's only part of the resource package. We looked at some of the things around where needs within your school change. And so it's already been mentioned about consultation, but that it was important to consult with schools to meet the actual needs. I think Sharon said about that before, and to be able to reallocate to suit needs or get extra funding without having to go through too much red tape. By the time you actually get it, you've solved the problem yourself, or the needs have had to go elsewhere where it could be resourced. So to actually have everything in place for the students and the families that you have at your school, you need to have that 100%. The other thing we looked at was where you get special funding. So you get a lovely grant of $750,000, and only about $350,000 of that goes to benefit the students. Everything else goes into private enterprise pockets. So our suggestion there was maybe to cap what can go into private pockets and make sure that the highest percentage of that government funding actually goes to meet student needs.